Welcome back to MVM. Today, I'm going to be taking a look at the new game Embarcadero coming soon from Renegade Games. Now, this game is based on the real-life history of San Francisco during the gold rush. Believe it or not, the city became so overpopulated that people started building houses and businesses on top of the boats in the harbor. And they would stack these buildings so high that I don't even know how they stayed standing. Now that is the premise of this game. You are going to be buying real estate basically and building buildings out on these ships and trying to expand out this community. Now you're going to be taking on the role of a famous historic character from the time period. Each player is going to choose one of those cards, and they actually have two sides. One for basic play, where they just generate a resource for you every round, and then a side for advanced play, where they have special abilities and special in-game scoring. I think most of us are probably going to want to use that advanced side. Now, in order to build out your property and build up your buildings, you're going to be playing multi-use cards. And these cards have a variety of functions, but they come in two different categories. You have your ship cards and you have your building cards. Now, if you see the game board already set up here in front of me, you're going to see that each player has their character, their board, and you're going to see these multi-use cards set off to the side. You're going to have a row of cards you can pick from, basically your building cards on one side and your ship cards on the other. Now, you will need those ship cards in order to build a foundation for your buildings, but you'll need those building cards in order to build them up, and that's how you're going to score points. To get you started, each player is going to start with a 3-space ship, and you're going to be able to put that next to one of these wharfs. You'll place these buildings of your color on the ship to indicate that it is yours. You have to build these structures and eventually fill those structures with a building by placing a little tile on top of it to show that it is a completed building. And what that building actually represents is whatever card you've played on your turn, and you're going to get benefits and score points in kind of an engine building mechanic where these buildings and ships are going to start to compile over time and allow you to do more with your turns. In addition, over here you're going to see the different victory point cards that you're going to use for each round. Now there are a large variety of these victory point cards. You're going to choose 3 of them to use during your game, and each round you're going to score a little bit differently. You're going to score on the first round, you're going to score your wharf bonuses plus your round 1 card. You're going to score your council track plus your second round card. At the end of the third round, you're going to score both plus a third card. And you'll see that council track snakes here and will allow you to pick up some benefits as you're playing the game. In addition, you're going to see a deck of landmarks here that can be revealed over the time, and you'll see a variety of component tokens, including money, ships, and sunk ship tokens. Because that's right, some of these buildings were so big, they actually required you to kind of sink the ship to serve as the foundation for that building. Now, at the beginning of the game, you're going to be dealt 8 cards, 4 of each type, and you're going to choose 5 of them to keep in your hand. If you look at a card, you're going to see that each card has a market value that you have to pay whenever you buy that card. That includes your starting hand, so you're going to have to pay that cost immediately. Every one of these cards also has a resource cost, which is listed on the right side of the card, and a resource benefit that's listed on the left side of the card. Once you place a ship or build a building, you're going to get those resources every time you build. So you can just keep using those resources over and over. They're never spent, they're just added. Once you have your 5 cards, you can kind of begin the game. Now, on your turn, you have to play a card. You're going to use it for one of those multiple different functions I talked about. You're either going to place a ship, build a building, or scrap a card for a benefit. Now let's talk about placing a ship first. When you do place a ship, you're going to take that ship card, place it down, and tuck it under your player board so that you'll see the benefit that you're going to be getting every round. You'll look and see what size ship that is, and then you have to place that ship out on the board somewhere. Now, the key here is that you can place this ship anywhere as long as it is adjacent to a dock or another functional boat. So you can build different kinds of patterns with these boats as you see fit. But here's the key. For every space of your ship that touches the wharf, you have to pay $1. So you have to kind of pay a rental fee. So you'll want to position your ship in a way that maybe you don't have to spend the most amount of money. However, the person that has the most structures next to a wharf is going to score points. So you have to decide now, do you want to spend that money to get more potential along the wharf, or do you want to avoid that and save your money for later? Once you have placed a ship down, you're going to get to place a structure on top of it. Now, this is another key mechanic in the game, is placing these structures down. Every time you build a ship or a building, you're going to get to place one. The level of which you place it is based on where you built the building. Ships are always going to be kind of the base from you to build up. Now, these little structures represent empty buildings. They don't have anything in them until you put a building inside of them, and we'll talk about that here in a second. Now, it's important to note that there are some more rules based on where you're placing. If you place adjacent to other players, you'll actually get a benefit. For every structure that you place adjacent to an opponent structure, you'll get to move up one space on this council track, and you'll see a variety of benefits that you're going to get as you move down this track, including victory points that will be scored when you score that track. Now, that's what happens when you place a ship. You're always going to place one structure there, regardless of how big the ship is. So players are going to be coming out here and basically playing these ships on their turn. Now, that's one of the actions. The second action you can do is build a building. Now, this is similar to building ships, but buildings have a resource cost. You need to look at your tableau and make sure that every resource you need there is represented. Keep in mind that your character card also produces a resource and might give you some abilities that help you build that building. Once you've decided on which building to build, you're going to look at the size of the building. Every building card has a certain number of dots, from 2 all the way up to 6. That represents how many of those empty structures that building takes. Now, to determine that, you're going to take a building tile of the correct size, for example 2, and you're going to place it on top of your empty structures, basically closing that off and making a building. Then you get to take one of your structures and place it on top of it. So as you can see, you're going to quickly grow up these buildings. Now, part of the key of the game is placing your structures in such a way that you can build out buildings in a level fashion. Because right here, I've only got one space left. The only way I'm going to be able to use this empty structure is if I place another boat and potentially build another boat structure right there. Then I could potentially place another 2 on top of that. Or if I was to build out even farther, for example, if I'm in a situation like this, I can actually build a building that requires 4, and I can take 2 2s to make 4, and I can kind of block that off and make one of the bigger buildings and put my structure right there. Now, what's interesting is that some of these buildings have a additional signature cost. If you pay this signature cost in addition to the base cost, you actually get to fill your entire building with structures and not just one space. So now I'm already ready to fill those structures and build an additional level. Every time you build a building, you're going to get victory points. Every building has a starburst value that represents how many points you're going to score, and they also have some kind of bonus. Some of these bonuses give you additional points. Some of them let you place more structures into play. Maybe they'll give you money, or maybe they're going to sit in your tableau and score you points at the end of the game. So knowing which buildings to play is important because you want to trigger those abilities when you can make the most use out of them. You'll also want to keep an eye on those in-game victory point cards because this card and this card both want you to have specific types of buildings. In addition, your character might score a specific type of building. Plus, you need to make sure that you have the resources to build the building and that you're going to be able to use the resources generated by that building. So there is actually a lot to balance in this game. The gameplay is fairly simple, but these decisions will make you rack your brain. Now, those are the 2 basic actions you can take, and there is a third, and that's just scrapping a card out of your hand. Every time you do that, you're going to gain the scrap bonus of that card. Every card has some kind of benefit that it's going to give you, or you can just cash it in for money or more structures. Placing more structures out on the board is key because if you don't have more structures, you can't build those buildings on top of them. Now, these scrap bonuses do a variety of things, including scoring you points potentially, getting you money, getting you new structures out on the board, moving you up and down the council track. They can do a variety of different things. Now, keep in mind that you have to do one of these actions with your cards. If you're not going to dock a ship or build a building, then you have to scrap a card. You're going to be one less card at that point. Then you're going to buy a card from the row. Each one of these cards has a market cost. You're simply going to pay that cost, take that card, put it in your hand, bringing you back up to 5 cards and immediately replacing the missing card. Now, out of those 5 cards, you're going to choose one to store. You're going to take a card and put it on your player aid. This is going to be a card that comes up to your hand for the next round. Once you've done these 2 things, you're done. So the next player is going to go. They're going to take their action, then they're going to buy their card, store their card, and pass around. Now, you're going to be using these 5 cards that you've placed in front of you to determine when the round ends. Once every player has 5 cards placed face down in front of them, that is the end of the round. You're then going to look at the round scoring, and you're going to score the victory card that's there and whichever round bonus you're scoring. Let's talk about wharf scoring because that's the first thing that's going to happen. You're going to look at each of these wharfs and you're going to count who has the most number of structures adjacent to that wharf. You're going to score a number of points equal to the length of the wharf. Each one of these wharfs starts at 7 length. However, there are ways to actually increase the length of a wharf, which is going to potentially get you more points. In this situation, the green player would score 10 points and no one else would get anything. If you're in second place on a wharf, you get half the first player's points. If you're in third place, you get half the second player's points. So it actually makes sense to kind of spread out your structures and your ships so that you're at least getting that third level of points on every wharf. Now keep in mind, the longer you make a wharf, the more points you're scoring, but you're also giving more potential for other players to come dock at that wharf and compete with your victory points. Now once scoring has been done, you're going to gain coins as generated by your tableau. At this point, you should have several cards in your tableau, and you're going to gain 1 coin for every coin that's printed on your card. You simply take that money and that's going to be your money for the next round. In addition, you're going to wipe out all of the building and ship cards that weren't purchased. You're going to discard those and you're going to replenish it for the next round. Now, you're going to play the second round just like the first round with that hand of 5 cards you set aside. And you're going to go through the same set of actions by storing one of these cards every round until you're finished with the second round. Now, the second round, you're going to score that second round victory point card plus the council track. Now, by this point in the game, you've probably been moving up and down the council track. People are starting to build their structures close together and scrapping cards and just making their way down that track to gain those bonuses. At the end of the second round, you're going to score 3 points for every player that is behind you on this council track. So if there are 2 players behind you, you will score 6 points. Again, over the course of that second round, you're still setting aside those cards so that you can pick them up and you can play through a third round. You're going to go all the way back through that third round, and yes, you're still going to be storing cards, and we'll talk about why here in a second. But you're going to get through that third round, and then you're going to score both the third round card, you're going to score the wharfs again. Keep in mind, the wharfs are probably bigger now, worth more points, and there's going to be more competition because by this point, you've probably covered most of the board. And then you're going to score that council track again. Now, that's going to kind of determine the final score, but there's a few things that you have to add into that. For one, your character card is going to give you an in-game scoring condition if you're playing with the advanced side. So you're going to calculate all of those points. In addition to that, a lot of the buildings that you might have played in front of you are going to give you points at the end of the game. So you're going to look at every building card that has that in-game scoring icon. You're going to add up all those points together and you're going to add those to your score as well. You're going to score the printed value of the last starburst you've passed. So for this example, the yellow player here would get 6 victory points. Now finally, you're going to look at the 5 cards that you set aside for that last round. You're going to reveal them and you're going to look at the market value or cost of each one of those cards that you set aside. And you're going to score that many victory points as well. So if you have some really expensive cards in your hand, maybe you don't want to play them, you actually want to keep holding on to them round after round so they can make it to the end of the game and you can score a lot of points that way as well. Once you've added all those different points together, you're going to determine who wins the game. So thank you everyone for watching my look at Embarcadero, coming soon from Renegade. Now, This is a Kickstarter prototype you've been seeing today, and of course they're going to make some changes, and I already know of some of the changes and tweaks they're making to the board and cards, and there could be more surprises waiting to be unlocked via stretch goals, so definitely take a look at the Kickstarter campaign. But as always, please come back, leave some comments, like, subscribe, follow us here at MVM, and thank you for watching. I will see you next time.
Congratulations, you got to the end of one of our videos. Now, if you want more practice, just click on the video over here. It's another video. You might not have seen it yet, so click on it. If you don't want to do that, at least click on the subscription button below. That always helps us. And if you want notifications, please ring that bell.